Hello, listeners, and welcome to this mini-series on infiltrating cults. I'm your speaker, Casey, and in part 1, Lisa Van Arnsdale talked us through her life and interest in cults and high-control groups. In parts 2 and 3, there will be a focus on experiences Lisa has had inside specific groups that are widely considered to be cults. For early access to ad-free full-length episodes, please go to patreon.com/thecultvault to support the show, or follow the links in the episode description. Now, here is Lisa.
So, can you talk us through what it was like to visit the Bobo Dreads? How do you visit these places? A lot of the time, it's not like you can just walk through the front door or the front gate or however it happened.
Totally.
And yeah, again, just paint that whole picture for us on what your experience was like.
Yeah, and I remember the Bobo Dreads a little better. Again, I looked through my journals, and 24-year-old Lisa also did not see fit to write about visiting them, and I'm really mad at her. But so like the Bobo Dreads are a more I don't want to use the word militant, but much more serious brand of Rasta. They cover their dreadlocks. I guess people call them just locks nowadays, but they cover their locks with a scarf at all times, and they wear robes, and they like to march around, and they have drums that they play at certain times of the day where they all face east toward Ethiopia. It kind of reminded me of like when Muslims pray facing the Mecca or something like that. Rastas in general, they're looking at the same verses in the Bible that Orthodox Jews are looking at. Like, you know how Orthodox Jews have the curls along the side? They cite the same Bible verses for why that is. It's the idea that when God comes back, he's going to pull you up by that hair. Or I could be getting that like not 100% accurate. But it's interesting to see that other like similarity between different groups. But the Bobo Dreads, they live way, way, way up in the hills. I was staying with a family friend who lives in Jamaica at the time, a Jamaican person. And I told him, like, I want to go visit the Bobo Dreads this trip. And he was like, the what? But his friend knew what I was talking about, and he wanted to go too. So he enlisted someone who like fancied himself to be a more informal Rasta who would be fascinated to go, like, to drive us up there. And it was a long, bumpy ride, and like you're seeing goats on the side of the hill and everything, and he had to stop for directions a couple times. But we eventually found our way to Bobo Hill. That's what they call where they live, and it's all gated in. And this was just like such a funny moment to me. Like, do you know in The Wizard of Oz where Dorothy's like at the gate and the guy opens the little window? That happens there. And like you're just expecting to hear, you can't get in to see the wizard. Like, but they let us in, and I was immediately like pulled into a shed where a lady asked me about my menstrual cycle and decided that I could come in. And they were starting to drum, like it was the drumming time of day. And so we were immediately like, okay, we have to put all of our things down and face east toward Ethiopia. And the guys who were with me like had to like do the Rasta symbol with their hands while this is happening. And I have to put my left hand on my chest because that's what the women do. And after that was over, the guys who were with me were like, we were not prepared for this at all. But from there, like the drumming happened. We were shown around to a certain extent, I think. And we got to like sit in an office with a guy who's like higher up. And I remember he told me like not many, they kind of try to, and this all due respect to Rastafari, is a more culty characteristic, I had asked them like about education, and they said they will send their young people down into Kingston to go to university, but they try not to do it too often because then they never want to come back. Like, shocker, not surprising. But the guy who was with me, who fancied himself to be a Rasta, had a lot of questions for him, and they gave me a pin with Haile Selassie on it. That's their like Messiah type figure. And then they like, expected me to buy lots of things, and then we were on our way. But that was a major bucket list thing for me. I was very happy to have made that happen. It's not easy to find them.
So you didn't call ahead or anything like that to let them know you were coming to visit?
No, if I had like established a way to do that, I certainly would have, but I couldn't find any information about that at all. And it seemed like the guy who we'd enlisted to drive us had grown up like semi close to where they were, so we'd at least be able to find them. And worst case scenario, if they say, oh, we're not taking visitors today, we could plan around that for the next time or whatever.
Do you think it would be common for them to just take visitors?
It seemed like they were very open to visitors, as cults tend to be, because visitors might become members. I don't think that this group in particular was necessarily in the market for members, but they're always in the market for good PR, and for anyone who will like pour resources into them as donations or purchasing their handicrafts or whatever. So they like gave me, they're probably buried deep in my closet, like some stuff about like, oh, well, we're going to be having this event where we do whatever dancing, and you're welcome to come back for that. And if I don't know why I've never like made it a point to go check them out again. And I've been to Jamaica a lot. I might go pay them a visit again the next time I'm in town.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So even though they're kind of really out in the sticks, really in the middle of nowhere, in my opinion, perhaps they, in a place where they don't want to be found or visited because it's so out of the way, yet they have a shop on site where people that do come to visit, who are welcomed in, who see, perhaps even if it's just on a surface level, what happens within the group, can still buy trinkets to take away with them.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for sure. I guess the train of thought is like, well, anyone who went to the trouble of finding us must really want to be here. So let's have some stuff available.
So let's talk about some of the groups that you have visited. You sent me an email that just had a huge list, and I've just cherry picked a few from the list to talk about
Totally.
today. And if you could just go through that same whole process with us for each of these groups, how you approached them, how long you stayed, what your experience was like, how you interpreted the motives or the community, and all of those things. And we could start with the 12 tribes.
Absolutely. And I want to start by saying that the lady who you interviewed about the 12 tribes, who had not visited them, but just knew anything and everything about them, she did a dynamite job. So huge round of applause for her. That was really, really cool for me to listen to. They're a group that I've had a harder time processing my experiences. So to listen to that was really valuable for me. But the first thing I would say about the 12 tribes is, if you're ever in America and near a yellow deli, eat up, because the food is wonderful. Huge fan. They made a cilantro hummus that has changed the trajectory of my life. I now make cilantro hummus all the time. So they were not really on my radar of places to visit. But I was off visiting a bunch of groups, and a Facebook friend had noticed and was like, hey, well, if you're in the South, you should check out the 12 tribes. And I knew who they were. I had seen an episode of Cults and Extreme Beliefs about them. I'm sure your listeners already know what a fantastic series that is. Oh, going back to Rastas for 1 second, there is a fantastic documentary called Awake Zion that talks about the similarities between Rastafari and Orthodox Jews that I 10 out of 10 would recommend to anyone who wants to learn more about that. Back to the 12 tribes. So they might be the cultiest of any group that I've ever interacted with. So I found a group of them that was like convenient for my itinerary off their website, and I called them on their landline because they use those, and was like, hey, I'm visiting a bunch of religious groups. I would love to come say hi to you. Would that be okay? And the lady I was speaking to on the phone was like, absolutely. We always say, come for a day or stay, which is a very extreme sense of welcoming. And I said, well, I'd love to come for like a few days, if that's okay. And she said, yeah, absolutely. Come stay for a few nights. And I said, okay, I'll be over. What do I need to expect in terms of like schedule, like what behavior, wardrobe, etc. She was basically like, yeah, just be ready to be loved. That's what groups always say. Be ready to be loved. And be ready to like pitch in, because I told her like I'm happy to help out in any way while I'm there. And she said, we wear modest clothes, and if you don't have the right stuff, no big deal, you can just wear ours. So they're like quite literally ready to give you the clothes off their back. Which they did, and I'm a little chubby for their clothes, but I squeezed my ass into their puffy pants and made the best of it. But I stayed with them for a few days. I had the unique experience of seeing a baptism happen. A lady had just joined the group, and that's how you kind of officially become part of things. And that was happening the first night, and they were very blatantly love bombing her. They just all sorts of flowery language about how this is where she's meant to be and all of these things. And she was what you stereotypically think of with someone who would be joining a cult. Like, we know that there's not a specific type of person who does. It can happen to anyone. But she was like a person who was kind of all alone in the world. She'd grown up in various foster homes, so she didn't have a strong support network. And she'd been very nomadic. And when COVID had started, she had bunkered down with some Mormons and had pretended to go along with that for the sake of somewhere to stay. And just like a very all over the place person who had not gotten a fair shake in life, and quickly became acclimated to having some affection and belonging. So she got baptized in, and that was a unique thing to see. Another young lady who had been brought up in the community, her parents were in the community and everything, her whole family. She was 22, which is like give or take the age where you're then like an adult who will then go live at a different community. So they were starting to like give talks about that at the time. Like, she's an adult now, and we've done our best with her. We're proud of who she's turned out to be, and we're going to send her to this other community. And, the expectation is then that she'll start looking for a spouse and everything. But I met all sorts of people who had been born into it, people who had family members who had opted to leave. There were a couple older women there who had been in it from the very beginning, like joined within a year of the 12 tribes getting started, who said that their leader, Gene Spriggs, was like a father to them. He had died within a year of me going to visit. I met a girl who had joined while pregnant And so her son had been born into it. And her parents actually lived nearby, and she claimed to be on good terms with them and communicating openly with them, but I'm not fully convinced. But I definitely saw a lot of child labor, like a lot, which was like pretty surreal. Like they don't have toys, like the kids don't really play. They'll play like different forms of tag and stuff on their Sabbath days, but that's like pretty structured and as a group. But like kids don't get like time to like, you know, stimulate their imagination or anything. So to them, like getting to make a smoothie is playtime. Like I saw a girl who was 4 or 5, very excited to make a kale smoothie. And again, she's like 4 or 5 and she's using a sharp knife to cut things up. Like I saw so many children handling sharp knives. It was bizarre. I saw kids fighting over using a leaf blower because that's like almost fun to them. Just kids doing like heavy manual labor. I think I saw a kid chopping wood. And some of it, like, I have to say, like, these kids knew how to use knives. I would not be comfortable teaching my kid to use a knife that young, but they could clearly do it, which was also like a wonder to behold. But like I understand giving your kids chores or making them feel like they're part of the team or cultivating skills. But there's not a lot of education happening, but there is a lot of like chopping veggies happening.
And if you're adept at that at the age of 5, it calls into question how long you've been doing that for to have that level of skill at such a young age.
Right. Yeah. So like very surreal to see all of that stuff happening. At one point, there's one little boy who I think of there, and it tugs at my heartstrings. The son of the lady who had joined when she was pregnant. He was 3, I think. And he seemed like he might have some sort of undiagnosed something, like he might have ADHD or maybe be on the spectrum or something. And they were working on getting him to understand how to wash dishes. And I cannot comprehend the idea of a 3-year-old washing dishes at all. And his mom was like, we're working on getting him to wash dishes without playing with the water. And that was obviously not working out because it's thrilling to have this like big spray thing, you know? And so she like told him, you're being very disrespectful. And they disappeared into another room and came back. And I think if not for me being there, whatever happened in that room would have just happened in the world, like out, like there in front of whoever was around. They have this thing where like you're clearly like like everyone knows who their nuclear family is. Like it's not that communal, but you definitely can, like, if the situation calls for it in their eyes, discipline someone else's kids. He was acting up at another point, and this other lady, she like inserted herself and was very stern with him and told him that he needs to do what is pleasing, which was creepy to me. I know that you want to do what is pleasing. I know. And she told him, again, a 3-year-old, to humble yourself to your Ema. Ema is the word they use for mother. Like, can you imagine like telling a 3-year-old, humble yourself to your mother? And so he just like was like, sorry. And the mom was like, I forgive you. And then they went back to doing whatever they were doing. But it was bizarre. but they definitely are very hardworking people, very, very capable when it comes to like any sort of domestic or landscaping, anything. They've got their own livestock and make their own cheese. I have this really excellent picture of a guy like holding this massive glob of mozzarella that he was making. We got to have, whenever they need to like make a certain task a priority, they call it a push. And they like what's the word I'm looking for? Set people apart to focus solely on that activity. And while they were there, they had a pie push. And as many women as possible set aside time the one evening, and we made 70 pies. Yeah, 70 pies. I got to use like an industrial thing that like cuts out. It felt like I was on a field trip. Like I got to learn how to make soap and shit. I got to use like this thing that cuts pies and like pet the baby cow. Like I felt like I was on a field trip in many ways. I got to see how their irrigation works. And they don't, because they're like constantly going to run their yellow delis and to feed the group and to keep everything, you know, running smoothly. There isn't any time for entertainment or like really much leisure. Like I think they had like a half hour before the evening meeting that happens right before dinner where they could like, you know, get their kids changed or get whatever in order that they needed to do. But there's never any time for them to like to sit and think critically. You know, like nobody's ever alone. Nobody ever has time to twiddle their thumbs and start thinking about like the bigger picture or anything. And they're not necessarily getting 8 hours of sleep. And I'm sure you've had other guests on who have talked about how, like, if you're not having spare time to like decompress and time to sleep and rest and think for yourself, that like it's going to get real culty real fast. Um, yeah.
So what year was this that you went to visit the 12 tribes?
This was about 1 year ago. I think I might have been there this time last year, or maybe like a year and a week ago or something.
Oh my goodness, so it was recent.
Very, very recent. Yeah.
I thought that you were going to say that it was like 8 to 10 years ago or so, because
No.
the controversy, the reason that the 12 tribes has been marked and labeled as such a controversial group is because of the numerous allegations coming forward of child labor, child trafficking,
Mhm.
labor trafficking, and the physical discipline that the children receive. And so many people have come
Yes.
forward to talk about this from around about 2012-ish onwards. It's been a steady stream of people coming forward to say this is what happens behind closed doors. But you really went that recently.
Yeah, and I think that like in that situation where the boy was not washing the dishes, that's why they went to a separate room. But I didn't see like bruises on children or anything like that. I think that things have mellowed out a bit in that regard, but they will tell you all about how it is important to spank, um, and why they believe that. And they are under the impression that the problem isn't beating children that has gotten them into trouble, it's spanking. So from their perspective, they're not being abusive. But like we've seen the footage out of that place in Europe. Um, so whether he was just spanked or not, I don't know, but it couldn't have been that intense because they were only gone a moment.
They're not
But
trying to hide the child labor from you, though, in other regards.
no. One lady did say, like, she had taken me to, she was like the lady who makes the soap and everything. She said, like, how they do, like, give quite a bit of thought to making sure that they have age appropriate tasks for the children, which I think we might disagree on. um, but nice to see the effort, I guess. Like she said, like a good job for like my little one to do would be like to like fill the bottle, but then the one who's more coordinated can put the lid on because they're good at putting lids on or whatever. Like they're not like handling like dangerous substances or anything, but I don't think that children should be chopping wood. I don't think that children should be handling knives or anything like that.
What was the general age of the people working at the Yellow Deli that you went to visit?
Um, they were all adults. Um, I was privy to a conversation after they announced that that one young lady was going to be moving to another community to like be an adult or whatever. One of the older kids said, "Well, who's going to take her time at the deli?" And I think they had said like you'll be taking some of it to her. Um, but she was definitely she couldn't have been more than 12. Um, but I might have misunderstood that. I'm not sure.
So you mentioned at the start of this segment that the 12 tribes community was one of the most difficult that you went to visit. Is it because of the things that you saw whilst you were there, or was it a lasting effect of visiting this insular community?
It was, yeah, like a year later, I'm still processing the experience. They were definitely the cultiest in that, like, they are a cloistered community. Nobody has their own assets or anything. They are very, very stern about once you join, you are in. And if you leave, they really hope that you can figure out whatever the issue is so that you can come back, but they're not going to be friendly to you in the meantime. They called the covenant that they make when they join being like a marriage. Like this is till death do we part. Like really serious. They nobody has their own anything there. You know, like nobody's making money working in the Yellow Deli. It all goes into a common pot. Um the girl who had joined when she was pregnant, we were driving things from point A to point B somewhere on the property. I don't know. And she said, "This was my car. And then I joined the community and now it's our car." Um, so like it's an exceptionally difficult group to leave, especially if you're born into it, because you're not going to know anyone outside unless they did the tremendously difficult work of leaving who can help you. You know, like this girl now doesn't have a car. She doesn't have X, Y, and Z that you would need to then leave on your own and not be like a helpless homeless person. Um, it was largely a very pleasant visit. It wasn't until my last full day that they started like making me uncomfortable in our like interactions. So like all of a sudden everyone wants to pull me aside and be like, "And you did get our pamphlets, right? Have you read them? Do you understand them? Aren't they wonderful?"
Okay.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I got them. Thank you." And I had gone with like a very hard out. When I had gone, I had left all of my valuable things at a friend's house who lived like an hour and change away. She lives in Washington, D.C. before going to them. And I had said, like, they knew that I had visited other groups prior to them, that this is a thing that I'm doing for my own joy or whatever. And so that way, when like they told me, like, "Oh, like you can stay forever," and they were letting me know, like, you can stay forever. I said, "Oh, well, my friend who moved to Scotland, she's going to be back for the first time since COVID, so I haven't seen her in a couple years." And yeah, so like, gotta go see her, and she's got stuff for me from Scotland, and like that was all true. But I was like, that's a hard out that they like can't, really work around. But it got a little creepy toward the end. So like I had arrived on a Wednesday, and then Friday at sunset starts their Sabbath, and it goes for 24 hours, like with Jewish people. And so Friday nights is when they have like a sort of open house where if there's people that they've been witnessing to in the Yellow Deli or whatever, they'll invite them like, hey, come to this dinner Friday night and see what we're all about and everything. And it's kind of like a festive sort of event. And this group in particular, like this community where I was visiting, it's near the Appalachian Trail. And for anyone who's not American who's listening, the Appalachian Trail is a massive hiking path that covers most of the East Coast of the United States. It starts way up in Maine and goes all the way down to Georgia. It's a common thing for someone to set aside like 6 months to hike the entire thing in one direction or another. So because we're close to the Appalachian Trail and because people who hike on the Appalachian Trail are like open-minded, wandery type of people, they want to, sink their claws into them. So they offer free places to stay on their property for people who are hiking the trail, and they'll feed them and then drive them back to the trail. And I had met people there who that's how they got them. Like they were through hikers and that's how they were introduced. And now they're married with 5 children in the community. So it was Sabbath dinner, and there were these 2 girls there visiting. They were through hikers. So they were there to take advantage of a free place to stay, but they'd been given clothes and they were at the evening meeting and then at dinner. And there was also this guy visiting who was like local. And so the girls sat at dinner with me, and because like I've been there for a few days, so like even though I'm not part of this group, I feel like I'm in a position to make people feel welcome, like to be a little hospitable. So they sit with me in this one family and we're all chit-chatting or whatever. And I say to the lady, like, oh, I was going to leave tonight, but would it actually be okay if I leave in the morning? Because it was just getting late and I had a long drive. And she's like, of course, come for a day or stay, la-di-da. And so the hiker girls hear me say this and they're like, oh, what time are you leaving in the morning? And I said, probably pretty early because I've got a really long drive ahead of me. And they said, well, could you give us a ride back to the trail? And I said, yeah, no problem. I'm going that way anyway. And it's these people's Sabbath. So that's one less thing for them to worry about on their day of rest. And the lady heard me say this and she didn't, like interject at all. But then after dinner, this guy who I hadn't interacted with much comes up and is like, did you offer the hikers a ride? And I was like, well, they asked me for one. And I said, yes, is that okay? And it was not. He was visibly stern with me and he had said, you're a guest here. You shouldn't be doing that. We need to keep track of where people are and how they're coming and going. And I was like, well, they asked me and figured it's your Sabbath tomorrow. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause any trouble or whatever. And he was like, okay, I understand. But that like freaked me out. And in the midst, like when he came to say that, I was already in the midst of a kind of intense situation where this one elderly couple who had been in it since they were very young, they had been away for a couple days helping at another community. So they come back and it's my last full day. So they're just getting to know me. And I'm like doing something on my phone and the husband's telling me how that's like a sign of the end times and everything. And he's very intense. And now I'm meeting his wife as I'm helping clean up dinner and she's begging me to turn my life over to their God. So like I'm literally just sitting here and this lady's begging me to turn my life over to Yahshua. And up comes this guy that's like, did you offer the hikers a ride? And I'm like, this is a lot. This is a very intense 15 minutes of my life. So me and the hikers got out of there real fast in the morning. I couldn't drop them off there in the dark or I would have. Like it was time to go. And I didn't sleep very well that night.
Oh my goodness. So there was no part of you at any point that considered all of the things that they were telling you in terms of staying?
Oh, absolutely not. Like, was not in the market at all. Like, by the end of it, I had washed so many dishes while I was there, Casey, because that's like the one thing there that I know how to do. Like I don't know where the dishes belong necessarily, but like that's the one way I can be helpful. I would be miserable living there any longer than I was. Like just constantly chopping veggies and peeling eggs and the pie push and everything. Like it's okay to live life that way for like a few days, like if you go away to camp or a church retreat or something where it's all very structured for the sake of the greater good. But to live your life like that all the time and have like no time to decompress or think or be alone, like was grating on my nerves by the end of those few days.
That is the end of part 2 of this mini-series on infiltrating cults. Part 3 will focus more on experiences Lisa has had inside specific groups that are widely considered to be cults. If you would like to find Lisa's writing, you can visit lisavanansdale.wordpress.com or follow the links in the episode description. To get in touch with me, you can find me at cultvaultpodcast@gmail.com or follow me on Twitter and Instagram at cultvaultpod. I'm your speaker Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.